All right, we are live.
All right, welcome to LearnBiz, the podcast. I'm Lisa K. Crawford, one half of LearnBiz.
And I'm Sandy Boisrond, and we thank you so very much for joining us today. We have a very special guest who is going to talk with us about being a corporate attorney entrepreneur. So Lisa is going to go ahead and get us going, and we'll get into the questions.
Welcome, Michelle A. Pamies Esquire, to LearnBiz, the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
We are so delighted to have you here. March is Women's History Month, and so it's very special to have you here on the first Tuesday of March to help kick us off.
I'm happy to be here. I can't thank you enough
Well,
for
thank
inviting me to
you.
speak to these great, extraordinary young ladies.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. We're such in good company. So to get started, can you tell the good folks who are listening, who are watching, a little bit about you, Michelle A. Pamies, the Esquire, and your background as a corporate attorney entrepreneur?
Well, my name is Michelle Austin Pamies. I'm an attorney in Fort Lauderdale. I work with the firm called Austin Pamies, Norris Weeks Powell, PLLC. We are at 401 Northwest 7th Avenue in Fort Lauderdale. So I did not come upon this practice of law in the usual sense. So I was married, I had a couple of kids, and then I decided to go to law school. I already had a prior career. I went to law school in my 30s, graduated at the age of 35, and started to practice. My practice started at Holland and Knight, so I went to big law to start with. And then I moved on to in-house positions, quite a few different ones, Auto Nation, which is here in South Florida, Union Pacific Railroad, which is in Omaha, Nebraska. And at some point, I was the general counsel of a state agency and a general counsel of an auto retail company, then known as Planet Automotive. I believe it's now known as the Potamkin Automotive Group. So after my last corporate job, I was out of state. I was in Omaha, Nebraska. I decided to relocate back to South Florida, my home. And at that point in time, I decided to go out on my own. Not quite on my own. I started with my good friend, Bernadette Norris Weeks, and became her law partner. And then as the business grew a little, we added Norman Powell, who brings a lot to the table as well. And now we do municipal law would be 70% of what we do. And the balance of the 30 would be transactional work, corporate work, and commercial litigation.
That's really awesome, and thank you for sharing that path. It seems so focused. Was any of that accidental, or did you just happen to land in that career and
I,
that path? How did that all happen?
I think that it was, it's not quite accidental in the sense that, first you have to go to law school, then you have to but I think that I always wanted to do corporate work. From the time I was in law school, I thought that that's what interested me. So when I went to clerk for Holland and Knight in the summer, I lobbied for them to permit me to get an offer in the corporate department because that's where I wanted to be. It was a bit of an accident that I received a call from a friend who told me that they were looking for someone at Auto Nation to do corporate work. It was a time when they were doing a lot of mergers and acquisitions there. And I was at Holland and Knight, quite happy until this came along. So I went and interviewed and I moved to Auto Nation. I thought there was something positive about having equity. So I thought it was an opportunity. So I went there working as a general counsel for a state agency. It also happened by happenstance. I received a call from someone who told me that the head of this agency wanted to meet with me. I did not know him. Apparently, I was referred by a third party. We had a conversation. And at that point, I thought, the general counsel title was something I wanted. So I thought if I would just get the experience, maybe this is my path. I could have it. So I went there. I was getting the experience as a general counsel there when I received a call from someone referred to me by my former general counsel at Auto Nation, who told me about the general counsel position with Potamkin Automotive. So I thought this was it. This was my dream. I was going to be the general counsel and this time in the private sector. So I came down and I worked with them for a few years and would have probably been there until today, except that I got married. And when I got married, I had to relocate out of state. And so I relocated to Omaha, Nebraska, because that's where my husband was. And I worked for Union Pacific Railroad as their in-house corporate department. I did all kinds of commercial transactions. My title was Senior Counsel Commercial Law, but it was everything: purchase of goods and services, information technology, joint ventures, business transactions of all types. So I did that until I came down here. And when I came back to South Florida, it was a search for where I would land next. I had to start over, basically. And the thought of going out on my own was a little bit intimidating, but I was convinced by my friend that it's a path I could take. The risk wouldn't be so great since she was established already practicing. And she thought that if I joined her, maybe we could do well together. And I think
he was right. And she was right. Yeah. So I love that. Thank you so much for just sharing so much of the details. I'm going to kick this over to Sandy, see if she has a question or two for you.
So I do. Like, what motivated you to go to law school in the first place? Because you were already in your career, you had your family, you had your whole life going. Why shift gears?
Well, actually, it was the fact that I had kids. That's really the truth. I felt like I had a limited career path in what I was doing. I was the office administrator for a real estate developer. And I felt that in order for me to really be in a better place or get a promotion in that setting, I would have to now become an engineer, right? Because that is where the future would be in real estate development. For someone who has that knowledge base, I thought, as an engineer, I looked at my let's say, I knew myself enough to know that science and math weren't my strong points. And I thought I was a good writer, and that maybe I could find a career in law where it's really about reading and writing. So I pursued it, but it was to make sure that my children could do better if I did better. That's why I did it.
Definitely appreciate that. And we're right now entering Women's History Month, so I want to just kind of do a little plug for that, because many times women may feel that they can't make changes at certain ages. I also went to law school in my 30s, and it was a complete shift from some of the things that I was doing at the time, because like you, I had the same feelings. Like, I felt like I was getting to a point where there was nowhere else for me to go, and I wanted more. So what does it mean to you when you think of women's history and Women's History Month, to be in the position that you're in right now, where you're not only taking your destiny into your own hands, but you're basically opening opportunities for other women as well to do similar things to you?
Well, the thing about Women's History Month, I do have a particular weakness for women's issues, right? So I'm a board member of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute because it focuses on women and their development. I'm a board member of the Women's Fund of Miami-Dade County, which focuses on the same issues, but across a broader spectrum. And I am, I think that whatever I'm doing, of course, I'm not doing it alone. And I've always had the support of others throughout my career, mostly women and a few good men. And so I'd like to be in the position to do the same, of course, to bring people with me who, since I've already had the experience and benefited from it.
I love it. Michelle, I want to ask you about we ask everybody about the pandemic. Did it bring any special challenges to you in business, especially the shutdown portion, or maybe transitions or pivoting in business? Did any of that happen for you during that time?
Not really. What happened to me during that time was mostly focused on having a change of environment because I was doing my work mostly from home for a very long time. And it's kind of frustrating because you're not quite as engaged with the rest of the world when you're only talking to them on the telephone or by Zoom or WebEx. So that was a change of environment for me. But in terms of our work, what really happened was since we were representing municipalities, if anything, they had more difficulty requiring legal assistance during the pandemic, the peak of it. They had all these new rules about, how they were to permit employees to work in their homes, what exactly they can do in terms of masking or mandates, or with what happens with the vaccines. Can they require it? And how can they assist their workforce in general? They had a lot of issues. There was an executive order coming out every few days directing how cities, not just with their employees, but with the municipality itself, how they were to monitor things like masking. When people, there was a point in time when businesses couldn't open, certain types of businesses couldn't be engaged in. If you remember, even parks required masking. So there was a lot going on, and we had a lot of work. So it did not really impact the day to day of the work for this particular law firm that we are, because we just represent a lot of municipalities and they have work.
Wow, yes, it seemed overall like a chaotic time for employers, employees alike. Just oh my goodness. Well, at least you worked through all of that. Very good.
Yeah.
I have a question. I want to ask you about Black entrepreneurs. Um, I'm hoping you have a special place in your heart for working with Black entrepreneurs. I know you've worked and helped many different businesses. What can you say to this special group of Black entrepreneurs out there?
I'll say this: I do have a special place in my heart for Black entrepreneurs, and I think it's because I feel that in private practice I'm able to provide a service to that group, whereas in the corporate sector I was far removed from it, and I do appreciate whatever I've learned that I could provide as a service now to this group. So, what can I say? In general, with respect to a new Black entrepreneur, the ones who are established, they have something already figured out, that's for sure. But for a new Black entrepreneur, they need to start at the beginning, setting themselves up properly, knowing why they're forming an entity. Or are they just really supposed to just have a sole proprietorship? They're going out there doing something that doesn't require that liability protection that corporations and limited liability companies provide. If they're having a partnership, should they really have a partnership agreement? But instead of just forming an LLC and being taxed like a partnership, but having that protection, that limited liability protection that it provides. So they need to start out having the right structure, and they also should get some consultation, because what happens is that everybody can form an LLC, but at the same time it requires an agreement between the members, right? An operating agreement with the LLC and the members. And you want to be proactive to understand what it really means, so you can plan for things like, what if one of you wants to get out? What if you want to sell your interest? And you plan all of this in advance, which then avoid certain conflicts that usually come up when you have a partner. I'll give you a simple thing, such as, let's say you want to dissolve the company. You're three people, two of you want to, the other one doesn't. then and at that point alone, you're going to go back to the operating agreement to see, was it a majority that could make a decision, or was it all of us? Those kinds of things that if you just do them on day one and you plan, you may avoid a lot of conflict. I'm not saying you're going to avoid all, but you can avoid a substantial amount of it by knowing what you're getting into and planning for the future.
Absolutely. Sandy?
So, in thinking about this concept of organizing yourself as an entrepreneur, one of the things that we love to talk about on our podcast is the entrepreneur mindset. And we really want people to get into a place where they understand their role as an entrepreneur. It's multifold, and you have a lot of different hats that you have to wear. What can you say to entrepreneurs in terms of the things that they need to keep in mind about the way they operate, and the way that they see themselves interacting with their business?
Well, there are different types of entrepreneurs, right? There are people who are making investments. They're not really so much an entrepreneur, they're an investor. They're doing something that is more passive. They could have the ownership of real estate, and they're a landlord. They get X per month. They could delegate out their responsibility for maintenance to a third party at X dollars per month. And it's more passive, right? But if you're somebody who's going to be engaged in the business of your business, then you have to think about some other things. And those things include, are you somebody who's capable of devoting yourself entirely to it? Or do you have a full-time job somewhere else and you're trying to get this off the ground? Can you commit the time that it takes to make it happen, make it thrive? Those are just basic thoughts. How am I going to just organize my time to make this an effective project? The other thing is, this is not at all a legal issue, but it is an important issue to have had a business plan that you're trying to keep track of. There are beautiful ideas that we have, some thoughts we think this would make a great business, but you need to start breaking down the business into what it takes to have it achieve the desired goal, which is like a profitable business. So you need to put down how much your investment is going to be. How long will that investment last? Can you reach a break-even point with that investment? And how long is it going to take for you to reach it? And if it takes a long time, can you carry it for that length? All of these things that have to be broken down. And before you start putting yourself, not just your money, your own time into something, you want to make sure that it has a shot. Now, once you have a good business mindset, you have a good business plan, you have your plan to go. Is it something you could do on your own at first, or is it something that will need employees? Because once you get into employees, it's a whole lot.
So when I think about this concept of entrepreneurship, many times I look at the landscape and I see that folks use things like affirmations. They have mantras. They have things that kind of keep them going when times get rough, because they're always going to have some, we're always going to have some moments. What is it that keeps Michelle motivated and driven in her busince?
To be quite honest with you, it's not a mantra. That I can tell you. I think I'm kind of a self-driven individual, right? So I don't really need much of a push. So what happens is that when I have something to deliver, right? When I make a commitment to deliver it, that's my drive, right? The other thing is that I've never stopped to really analyze whether I like law better than some other career that I could have had. I'm just not that person. So I feel like I'm in it, right? I'm in it. I'm gonna do whatever it is to make it successful, right? I'm in it, invested in it. And then I've also kind of figured out that most things, once you start doing them on a regular basis, they kind of become part of you. And they are your contribution to society, those things that you do. each and every day. So as a result, I feel purpose in what I do because I feel that this is what I know how to do. Now, it's been a long time, right, since I've been doing it. And I feel that I add value. That's enough for me. And strangely, at this point, were I to be doing this for free, I would still be doing it because what else would I be doing? Is my question. I would, I could entertain myself differently, but what is my value add? Like, what can I provide to this world? Probably this is the thing I know best, so that's what I'm providing.
I love your response to that,
That's
Michelle.
beautiful. It's really beautiful.
It's real.
Sorry. It looks like I'm crying. I'm sorry. It looks like I'm crying, but my eye is giving me heck over here. But that was very beautiful.
It's real though. What else do I have to provide? It's like, think of this scenario. You're at a job and really your skill set, what to do. For example, you're the person who is the best mason, right? And then you stop being that person in terms of your work, and they tell you, okay, just supervise these laborers. And then you may be frustrated. You may be, I could see what they're doing, but I'm the best mason in the group. Shouldn't I be doing masonry to a certain extent? Well, this is, I feel that it's a comparable thing in any field, right? If I were just another human being, without that title of attorney, would my counsel matter? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. We always like to wrap up by asking our guests to just give some words of advice, as if you haven't already, but maybe one more gemstone for entrepreneurs as they try to stay motivated out here and stay organized to succeed in business. If you could give something else, a gemstone that they can walk away with.
If the one thing I could think of is to kind of acknowledge what you do not know how to do and then find somebody else to do it.
Oh, yes.
That humility is very important because, we can't do it all.
That's true.
And we probably, even if we think we know how to do something or we know how to do it sufficiently well, it's likely that you need assistance even in that. Because if you don't need any assistance, how do you grow the business? If, for example, you're the best person at drafting purchase agreements, but there should come a time when you have enough purchase agreement business that you need somebody else's help in it. And so it's the humility of acknowledging what you don't know and just generally understanding that you need resources in order for you to grow. And those resources have a lot to do with human resources.
Thank you so much for all of your great advice and support to entrepreneurs, Michelle. We definitely appreciate having you here on LearnBiz, the podcast. Can you tell folks how to reach you if they want to seek out some legal services or maybe seek out a new mentor? Because you seem to have some good things to share.
Well, like I said, my office, Austin, Pamies, Weeks, Powell, it's at 401 Northwest 7th Avenue in Fort Lauderdale. Our telephone number is 954-768-9770. And myself and my partners at the firm appreciate your having called on us for your presentation today.
Thank you so much. We will be calling up on you again, just so you know.
Bye. It was good.
Thanks, Michelle. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.